This could be us. So back to what I was saying. Could be us.
Oh snap. Hey man, it's Card Photons. You know we're gonna get into this video. But today, look, I said that all wrong. But look, we watching three true KLC horror stories. With an S. I hope I said S. But look, we're gonna go ahead and get into the video, bro. Make sure you like and subscribe, alright? Let's get into it.
I can't imagine most people have enthralling dinners under the roof of a KFC. But I, for one, remember dining there far more times than the average person. It used to be something my parents would do for me and my siblings back in the day. It wasn't enough for them to just bring it home. They wanted it to be more than just takeout. A family outing, they would always say. That said, I couldn't tell you I hated the place until the last time I went, only a few weeks ago. I was just about to move out of my parents' house, and they'd convinced me to go with them to KFC one last time, before I'd taken flight or whatever. It was purely nostalgic. I don't think any one of us still cared for the food there. It's different now. Anyways, my parents and I were just minding our business in the dining room of the KFC, chewing on regrettable numbers of questionable pieces of fried chicken in complete silence. My dad had just excused himself.
You know how KLC be having that dry biscuits and stuff? Man, bro. Let me say back, that tastes different. It ain't, all you taste is dry bread. But I get it, you talking about the chicken or something. The chicken taste about like the same.
To the restroom after I tried to break the ice by asking what him and my mom would do after I left home. That's when this man barged in. A man that looked exactly like the Colonel of Kentucky Fried fame. But it couldn't be him. The real Colonel was long dead. Everyone in the building, the customers and the employees, all turned their heads at this guy. Well, a mighty fine Friday afternoon to y'all. I'm Colonel Sanders. Right as he started speaking, I think the majority of us dropped our guard. By that point, everyone had seen the new commercials for KFC with that weird-looking spokesman/character person, and this guy nailed the act. It seemed obvious that this was some sort of corporate PR stunt, complete with an actor for the mascot and a room full of real, unwilling customers. For the most part, though, people just shrugged and went back to eating idly as the Colonel continued. I care indubitably for the quality of my establishments, which is why I'll be performing a full top-down inspection of this franchise today for all of you wonderful folks. Yes, managers, go check for a special message on your computers. The employees seemed to believe the guy too, at least for the moment, so the rest of us went along with it. I was just hoping we weren't being filmed by some hidden camera crew. Though my mother and I went on pretending to talk to each other, we were watching the Colonel from the corner of our eyes. He'd started his inspection in the dining room, walking up to all the tables and asking each of the customers, "How's your food, sir? The staff treat you well? Everything to your liking?" But each time, with every customer, at the end of his questions, he'd lean over the table and stare unflinchingly down into their eyes and ask, "Tell me, is it finger-licking good?"
Who says building websites as a team has to be an impossible task? With Editor X, the first true...
Most of the responses were a short, "Yeah, sure," or an, "I think we're done here." The Colonel would then hover over them for a few seconds while smirking. He then did the strangest thing. He started licking his own fingers. Slowly, people started to become a little more aware of him. The scene was weird as he would stare directly into customers' eyes while doing this action. I just hoped that he wouldn't visit our table. With that being said, he scurried over to us as though he could read my mind. "Well, how nice to see a young man repay his mother with a nice dinner." He spoke to both of us, but he only looked at me. And by that I mean, he didn't blink, twitch, or glance away even a little bit. "You're a fine young man, ain't you, boy?" I started trembling. I knew this dinner was going to be tense, but I hadn't thought I'd be put on...
He should call that man for Let me find out, bro.
on the spot quite like
Let
this.
me find out.
Thank you, sir. No. Thank you for dining here, son. How's your fried chicken? Tell me, is it up to your standards? I trust you now. My eyes darted around looking for a response, a sign from my mom, or to see my dad appear from the restroom. But everything seemed frozen. Very suddenly, the colonel fell to his knees beside me, reaching for my hands. Tell me now, boy, is it finger-licking good? He kept leaning in towards me with his mouth hanging open, staring at my fingers, like he himself was about to lick the crumbs off of them to prove it. That's when my dad finally got off the toilet and came back to his family. He shouted, "Hey, weirdo!" He then yanked that wacko away from me faster than I could even react. The colonel tumbled to the greasy floor of the dining room. "You trying to propose to my son, punk? Get out of here before I make you wish I was a cop!" Whoever that guy was, he wasn't official KFC staff, but he was definitely a wimp. He didn't put up any sort of fight after my dad threw him. He just rushed to his feet, laughed at us for a moment, then ran out the door. Come on, Margaret. We're getting out of here. We all got up and left the table. And I think that'll be the last time I ever stepped foot within 100 feet of a KFC. Later that weekend, my dad caught the news from the local channel which stated, the guy who impersonated the colonel had gotten arrested the night after we saw him. Reports say he disguised himself as the mascot to get into close proximity with customers to harass them. He then took it a step further by grabbing their greasy fingers and biting them off. He would flee the scene immediately after and hit up at least 5 locations before getting caught by the police. Several people were missing fingers from that one spree. I was stunned to think just how close I'd gotten to becoming an unfortunate victim of that weirdo's hunt for greasy fingers. And to this day, I get queasy whenever I see fried chicken.
Getting that chewing on it too.
I was a high school graduate that recently got hired for full-time work at KFC. We were the biggest chicken venue around town, as places like Popeyes weren't as big of a franchise at the time. Our hours of operations were usually 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., sometimes 12 p.m. for close if it was the weekend. The job came second nature to me. It was always clock in, clean up, fry the chicken, and of course assist any customers at the cashier. There was one memorable time when I was on my way to work and encountered a homeless man that literally dressed up as the colonel. I was initially a little skeptical that he was homeless from his fancy attire, but from the rumors circulating from the other employees, he had recently started panhandling around the area for the past several weeks. As I made my way towards the front door, the colonel raises his plastic cup at me and says, "Me lad, spare an old fella some change?" "Sir, I only make minimum wage." "If it wasn't for me, KFC wouldn't exist, kid. At least spare me some leftover chicken during your lunch break, okay? Get a job, old man." The first initial weeks of the job were swell, but things took a sudden turn for the worst. We had started running low on chicken, and my boss began to point the finger at me. He assumed I had been taking home chicken after my shift was done, but I assured him it wasn't me. This began happening on multiple